to Eggs and Issues, a monthly business program presented by the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. Eggs and Issues is supported by presenting sponsors Bank of America and Martins Point Healthcare, in cooperation with Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, First Light Fiber and Wex. Reception sponsors Key Bank, Clark Insurance, and Veryl Dana. Tomorrow's Leaders and Entrepreneurs sponsors AAA Northern New England and Springborn Staffing Center. Community Corner sponsor Baker Newman Noise. Parking is provided by Sevi and Mayer Engineers. Our exclusive radio sponsor, WGAN. Listen weekday mornings to Ken and Matt on the WGAN Morning News. Print sponsor, The Forecaster. TV sponsor, WMTW. And e-media sponsor, Maine Biz. And now, please welcome Portland Community Chamber of Commerce President Jack Lufkin.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. As it said earlier, I'm Jack Lufkin. I'm the volunteer president of the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce, and it is wonderful to see a packed house for what will be a very important debate coming up. In a minute, I'm going to bring Quincy Hensel up to the stage, and she's going to be the moderator for today's debate. But we have a couple of items of business. First of all, I do want to thank Alan Karen, Terry Hayes, Janet Mills, and Sean Moody for coming here today. Obviously, the Portland region is very interested in the gubernatorial debate, and this has become sort of a tradition that you appear at Eggs and Issues for a debate prior to, so we thank you for that. I also want to recognize our Portland City Councilors who dedicate a lot of time and effort into making the city as great as it is. I want to recognize Mayor Ethan Strimling, Councilors Jill Duson, Nick Mavadonis, and Spencer Thibodeau. And I'm sure there are many other dignitaries in the audience, but let's save time for the debate. So a couple of business items. This November, we'll be faced with several issues at the ballot box. 5 ballot measures to be exact, and we are pleased to announce that the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce has come out in support of Maine ballot questions 4 and 5. Question 4 on the ballot would provide $49 million in much-needed funding for the University of Maine system. That money would be used to improve facilities, remodel and improve buildings, and generally would make Maine schools more competitive. If passed, this would bring more than $26 million in direct investment to the University of Maine, Southern Maine campuses. The Chamber also supports Question 5, which would provide the community college system up to $15 million in funds that would see the renovation and expansion of an instructional laboratories, information technology infrastructure, and heating and ventilation systems at Maine's 7 community colleges. $4.3 million would go to the Southern Maine Community College right here in our home backyard. We all know that Maine's economic success depends heavily upon a skilled workforce, and produced by Maine's public universities and community colleges, questions 4 and 5 on the November ballot directly support our workforce needs, which is why the Portland Regional Chamber is putting our strong support and endorsement behind each question. Having a successful and robust university and community college system will allow us to train and keep the next generation of Maine's great workforce. So we encourage your support. Also on the ballot is the universal home care referendum. Many of you were here last month and heard the debate on this topic. The Portland Regional Chamber has voted to oppose this measure. We feel in-home care is an issue that needs to be addressed, but this referendum is the wrong solution. Simply put, it would increase taxes on businesses, individuals, and households that earn more than $128,400. It would require all caregivers to be employees of the state of Maine and eligible to join the Public Employees Union. And on top of that, it would be overseen by an unaccountable state agency. Also well worth noting is that the home care workers in the state, specifically the Home Care and Hospice Alliance of Maine, also oppose this effort. We ask you to please educate yourself on these ballot issues and be sure to vote. The Chamber remains actively involved in monitoring and engaging in policy matters at City Hall, such as the mandatory paid sick leave ordinance, the hotel linkage or development impact fees, prevailing wage, payment in lieu of taxes geared towards nonprofits, and many, many more. Please make sure you receive our advocacy newsletter to stay on top of what's happening in the city. You can sign up for that by emailing issues@portlandregion.com. I would also like to announce several events that the crowd might be especially interested in the coming month. We will again be hosting a community partnership with JP Morgan Chase. This one will be focused on international banking and finance. That will be held on October 24th at TICA. On October 30th, the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce will partner with the Institute for Family-Owned Businesses to present Spark, Transformational Growth Contest. This fun Battle of Bosses style showdown will pit James Morin of Flowfold, Margot Walsh of Mainworks, Lee Kellis, the owner of the Holy Donut, and Tyler Frank from Garbage to Garden, and they will each compete to win money for their chosen nonprofits. Should be a very fun event. First Light, one of our sponsors, is hosting the Cloud Connect Summit on October 25th at the Westin Portland Harbor View. A state of experts from some of the most prestigious and trusted IT organizations in the industry will present at the Cloud Connect Summit on October 25th. They have recently added cybersecurity expert and CEO of Snoopwall Incorporated, Gary Milievsky, as a keynote speaker. And for a limited time only, they are waiving the program fee for chamber members. Stay up to date, sign up for any or all of those events at our chamber's website, please. Also, with January being shockingly near, as the weather gets a little cooler out there, the Chamber is accepting nominations for its annual awards, Imagine Portland. We'll provide a link to vote in the follow-up email to this event, but it's never too early to begin thinking about the organizations and individuals from our region who have helped stimulate growth and have helped make the Portland area the best place to live and work. Next month, we will again be welcoming Toys for Tots here at Eggs and Issues. So please, if you attend next month, please consider bringing an unwrapped gift to a good cause. We're also partnering with our friends at Ably, a group to bring you the Maine Business Expo next month. It will be happening right here at the Holiday Inn following the November 14th Eggs and Issues. We'll be including more info on that in our next newsletter. Moving on, I'd like to recognize and welcome our newest members to the Chambers. It's been a very busy summer. We've had more than 41 new members join the Chamber. Normally we list each business, but today we're going to be featuring their logos on the stage. Here's a sample: Berkeley laser printed mailings, Drake Inglesy Millardio, I probably butchered that, I apologize, Ledgewood Construction, Maine International Communication Consultants, Maximum Potentials, Outward Bound Professionals, the Nature Conservancy of Maine, Bondico, 1-6 Green Cafe, and Rwanda Bean. Welcome to the Chamber. In the intro, you heard all of our great sponsors, but I'd like to call out a couple of quick ones here. We'd like to thank our special community partners, Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Spectrum Healthcare, the University of Southern Maine, and Southern Maine Community College. AAA of Northern New England and Springborn Staffings provide support for our Tomorrow's Leaders and Entrepreneurs program. This allows area high school and college students to attend Eggs and Issues. With us today, I'm very pleased that we have a very large contingent of groups from Gorham High School, the University of Southern Maine Community College, Falmouth High School, and Baxter Academy. If you represent any of those organizations, would you stand up and please be recognized? We so appreciate your attendance here, and I will say from past debates, you usually ask the best questions. So, the Portland Public Library is our For More Information sponsor, who provide additional information regarding today's debate after this event. Baker Newman and Noyes sponsors our Community Corner program, and this month, Community Corner is an organization that's known well to the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. It's Portland Downtown. Portland Downtown is in the business of maintaining a clean and safe downtown while building and promoting a vibrant business, residential, and tourism destination. From its award-winning summer cadet program to major community events like Merry Madness and the Old Port Festival, Portland Downtown ensures that our city center is safe, welcoming, and an exciting place for all of us to enjoy. Learn more at portlandmaine.com or visit the Portland Downtown office at 549 Congress Street. Portland Downtown is a great friend of the Chamber. Their Executive Director, Casey Gilbert, serves on the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce Board, and we've enjoyed great connectivity with that organization through the years. They work to keep Portland safe and beautiful, and their work can't be overstated. With us today, we have Casey Gilbert, Executive Director, Taffy Eaton, Office Manager, Amy Guerin, Downtown Experience Liaison, and Adam McDonald, Marketing and Communications Manager. Please stand and let us say hello to you. Now, for what you have all come here for, on to today's presentation. On November 6th, Maine will elect a new governor. We are very proud to have all four of those candidates here with us today, and we will be covering some very important topics. So without further ado, I would like to invite to the stage Quincy Hensel, CEO of our Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce, and all four candidates. Please come up to the stage. Thank you so much.
Where do you have us parked here, right here?
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Sean.
Hey, good morning. How you doing? Gary? Alan, how you doing? Sean. Got any more miles on that? Oh, yeah. All right.
Good morning. Welcome to the four candidates. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We're excited to have all four gubernatorial candidates here with us today for the Portland Chamber's 2018 gubernatorial debate. We have limited time to cover a broad range of topics, so we're going to get started. So please hold your applause until I've had the chance to introduce each of our candidates. Starting from now that the stage is flipped, I'm a little thrown, but starting from my far right, we have independent candidate and small business owner Alan Caron, independent candidate Maine State Treasurer Terry Hayes, Democratic candidate Maine Attorney General Janet Mills, and Republican candidate small business owner Sean Moody. Please, a round of applause for our candidates. The format of today's debate will be as follows. We will allow each candidate the opportunity for a 1-minute opening statement. We will then cover 4 issue areas of importance to the Chamber and our membership. Each candidate will have a question posed to them within each of the 4 categories, and you will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. Finally, in lieu of closing statements, we are going to pose a few additional questions from our audience. We've asked audience and chamber membership to submit questions ahead of time. You can also do so here at issues@portlandregion.com. Again, each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer those follow-up questions. Each segment today will be closely timed, and there is a huge countdown clock right here in front of all of you for you to watch and for me to watch that will be counting down your responses to each question. So let's begin with opening statements. We will go in alphabetical order, starting with Alan Caron. In the interest of fairness, I will reshuffle the order for each question so everybody has an opportunity to answer the question first. As previously agreed, you will have 1 minute. Can I key up the clock for 60 seconds, please? Wonderful, thank you. Alan, you may begin with your opening statement.
Good morning, everyone. We are living, yes, good morning, everyone. We are living in extraordinary times. We're enduring more change at a faster pace than anyone in human history. Change in our economy, in technology, in science, in health, and even occasionally in government. These times demand of us that we either adapt or we will decline. This is the rule of nature. We have not been adapting well enough. We're rushing to solve problems, but we're not adapting fast enough. I think if we adapt, we will flourish. If we don't, the problems that exist in most of Maine, though not so much here, will continue to expand. I'm the transformative change leader in this field. I'm going to share some big ideas with you today. And I just noticed the clock.
Thank you. Terry Hayes.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I describe this campaign as an 18-month-long job interview with over 500,000 Mainers. And this morning is your shot at us. So thank you so much for coming out. I currently serve as Maine's first independent state treasurer, elected by the partisans in the legislature, now twice, to help steward public funds, keep your money safe, and make sure that we're investing it wisely so that we can generate non-tax revenue to help pay for the things we want and need. It is an honor and a privilege to run to be your next governor. I'm the only independent clean elections candidate on the ballot for this office in November. And as such, I will owe everything to all of you, not some things to smaller groups or to folks who can write big checks or to folks who have a special interest agenda. I'll be beholden to all of Mainers. I'm concerned about the partisanship that has taken over in our state, and I want to be the reset button to bring us back to solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Mills.
Thank you. Well, I grew up in a family of Republicans and independents, about 80 miles from here, Farmington, where I delivered newspapers as a kid, and I served hamburg meatloaf and mac and cheese at the local restaurant as a kid. You know, when I walked in here, saw people eating eggs and sausage, I thought, did Becky's close? Was there a fire at Holy Donut? But I was privileged to have a family background that did talk about public policy all the time. If you want to know about bipartisanship, come to my Thanksgiving dinners. I've served as your Attorney General for the past 6 years. I believe I've always stood up for Maine people, small businesses, individuals, victims of crime, veterans, seniors, consumers. I'm proud to have that record of achievement. Stood up to big pharmaceutical companies and Wall Street giants. I'm willing to do that as governor as well. I see a change in Maine. I want to be that change agent too. I'm running for governor because I know that the best chapter in our state's history has yet to be written, and I want to write it with you.
Thank you. Sean Moody.
Thank you, and good morning. I'm the only candidate on the stage that has over 40 years of executive experience creating jobs and growing Maine's economy. If you look at the situation that we have currently in the state, a workforce, aging demographic, some people see that as the perfect storm. I see it as the perfect opportunity. We've taken our company from just a sole proprietor to 11 locations with over almost 200 co-worker owners. That's right, they own 34% of our company. I'm going to lead with humility, and I'm a servant-style leader that's going to empower people, not overpower people. We need inspiration, we need positive energy, and there's no more higher level of accountability than starting a small business and running it in your hometown. So I need your vote, I need your support on November 6th. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Everyone did a great job staying within their time limits. Now we're going to get into some of the issues that are of the most importance to the chamber and to our membership. And we're going to start with one of the biggest challenges for both businesses as well as individuals and families, and that is the rising cost of health care. You each will have 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds to respond. Terry Hayes, I'm going to begin with you. You've said as governor, and I quote, that you will get health care right, and that means universal access to affordable health care. Beyond the standard collaboration with business, community, et cetera, specifically, how will you do this and what will it cost?
Well, I wish I knew the answer to the second part of the question to start with, because we're all going to have to figure that out together. But how will we do this? Well, we start with what's missing right now. There's a gap for many Mainers because we did not expand Medicaid with multiple opportunities to do so. And so I will start with that because I think bringing the federal dollars towards this problem is in our best interest collectively. At the same time, we have to be careful. Systemically, the Medicaid program in Maine has a gap, a significant gap in it, and that's because the costs are here and the reimbursement rates are here. And it's that gap that's going to be a real challenge for us downstream. So we need, as we expand Medicaid, to open up access to routine health care for 70 to 80,000 more Mainers. We have got to work on closing that gap. We might not get it actually closed, but we can narrow it considerably, and that will make the program sustainable downstream. That's the first place to start. The second place, in my opinion, is rebuilding our wellness infrastructure, our health and wellness program. As a state, we spend a significant chunk of public dollars on health care, but we don't have a health and wellness, a public health perspective. We've dismantled that. We need to put that back in place. All of you as employers have recognized that that's the low-hanging fruit when it comes to bringing down the cost of health care, and we have to do that with our citizens. It's our public responsibility because of the chunk of our budget that we're going to spend. So those would be my priorities as your governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Mills, question for you. What is the single biggest healthcare issue facing Maine, and as governor, how would you address it and pay for it?
Oh gosh, well, they're really two interrelated. One is the lack of health care, health insurance, lack of coverage, and that relates also to the opiate epidemic. I'm the only person here who's actually worked on the state budget intimately for 4 years and had to balance a budget and work across the aisles to do the state budget, including the Medicaid program. I'm the only candidate here who actually has a 10-point plan to address the opiate epidemic, which I put out last January. I'd love to have your ideas about it too. I'm the only person who's actually delivered naloxone to police departments to save lives. As of the other day, 535 lives saved with that Narcan that I've distributed to police departments. The opiate epidemic is first and foremost on my mind. Medicaid expansion, we all talk about, well, how can you afford it? How can you afford not to do Medicaid expansion when 33 other states have done it, when our public health infrastructure is failing, when we have a high infant mortality rate, the only state where infant mortality is rising, not lowering, where we have seniors who can't afford prescription drugs, where we're not negotiating for the best prescription drug prices. We have a large challenge on our hands. Medicaid expansion is big, and it will help provide coverage for those people with substance use disorder who want treatment, who need treatment. Let's not just treat them in the emergency room or find them in the morgue. Let's get them back on their feet and being productive, healthy citizens of Maine again. Those are the two major issues, restructuring, rebuilding the public health infrastructure, and attacking the opiate epidemic with Medicaid expansion is a big part of that.
Thank you. Sean Moody, Maine's current governor has opposed Medicaid expansion, and as you look at Maine's healthcare challenges, do you agree with Governor LePage, and can you share the specifics on how you would fix healthcare in Maine, addressing the costs to be incurred?
I think the answer to the first one is the law has been passed. And as governor, I'm sworn by oath to uphold the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, the Maine Constitution, and the laws regarding the state. So I think, to me, that's been decided. I think where the controversy may be is in the funding mechanism. How do we fund this responsibly and sustainably? My experience is in the private sector, starting out with just single coverage. We were all single back then. And as my wife Chrissy's here, my family's here today, as we get older, we say, geez, get married, gonna have children, group coverage. So I've seen healthcare costs and insurance from 40 years ago to a company right now. Our healthcare premiums last year would have crested $1 million. $1 million. So I'm not getting my insurance paid, through the state or whatever, through private practice, in providing it for our coworkers and our employees. So here's the key. We have an experience rated plan, which kicks in over 50 coworkers. 90% of our businesses in Maine are 20 coworkers or less. They can't get an experience rated plan. So they don't get the benefits for wellness programs, HSAs, go to the gym, stay healthy. These are the habits that we have to have for our small employers that they can take home with their families. If we don't change that cultural difference, we'll never have enough money to pay for health care.
Thank you. And Alan Karen, we know you support Medicaid expansion in Maine, and you've said that if we have the courage to innovate and invest in prevention, Maine can lower healthcare costs and insurance coverage. Specifically, what innovations do you recommend, and how would you pay for that investment?
Let me start by saying I think healthcare is a fiscal, economic, and moral issue. I've come to the position that a country as wealthy as ours ought not to have any people without health insurance. History will not view us kindly for having the wrong priorities at this point in time. Every person in America should have health care. And when they don't have health care, if you want to look at it through the economic lens, they live shorter lives. They're less productive. Our investments in them don't pay off as much. So I'm for universal health care. The question is, how do we get there? This is a federal issue. This cannot be addressed at the state level. A small state with limited resources is not going to provide health care to everyone by itself. But I'll say this, the next time the federal government offers to put $9 on the table, if we can find one, I would not hesitate to take that deal in an instant. And the idea that we couldn't find the dollar is nonsense. I come from a family of hardworking people in central Maine. More than half of them now, I would guess, still don't have health insurance. They work hard. They work full-time jobs. They're without health insurance. So what do I want to do? I better be quick with 9 seconds. I want more transparency. We're going to have to fight for transparency. We're going to have to incentivize people to shop, and we're going to have to work together to make big change happen.
Great, thank you. I'd like to now move on to education, and I think most of us would agree that the key to a strong and healthy workforce and economy is education. Janet Mills, I'm going to start with you. Can you share with us what steps you would take to improve our K-12 public educational system, and how do your goals align with the statewide teachers union that is supporting your campaign?
Thank you for the question. Listen, my goal is to create a spectrum of education, cradle through college, that provides strong opportunities and the ability to achieve each student's goals. Getting rid of some of the mandated tests is important. Universal pre-K is important. I think the best investment we can make is in early childhood education. Why is it that only 30% of Maine children who are eligible for Head Start are in Head Start? Let's solve that problem right away. Let's invest in early childhood education. Let's find out why our third graders are not rating high on reading literacy achievement. Let's eliminate unnecessary and unproductive tests, support further professional development, and look at greater loan forgiveness programs for college-age students. Student debt, including the expanding and simplifying the Opportunity Maine program, which we funded when I was in the Appropriations Committee, expanding the Maine State Grant Program. I don't know specifically how those specific goals match any other organizations. They're things that I've thought about, and I've talked with a lot of people, including the Maine school management people, school principals, teachers, and parents, to arrive at the goals that I have in my platform. I'd also, achieve guidance from the state. I mean, I think that's critical. The last 6 years we've seen or 8 years, we've seen 8 different commissioners, interim, acting, actual, permanent commissioners of education. There's been so little guidance from the state on computer sciences, on achievement levels, on what a diploma in Maine needs. That's something I'll address on day one.
Thank you. Sean Moody, question for you.
Was that specific to K-12?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a slightly tweaked question for you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, yes.
Okay.
For these first 2 categories,
you can throw in higher ed if you like.
No, yes. Question for you. Yes. During the campaign, you've stated that Maine schools are overfunded. Is that accurate? Is that an accurate description of your position, and do you have specific ways to improve the K-12 education system? Please explain.
Yes, thanks, Quincy. And I am so passionate about education. Again, you folks know, Gorham High School grad, proud alum. The teachers were my first customers. They believed in me, and they supported me following my passion. Unlike today, a lot of educators, guidance counselors, and even parents want to push their children and young adults down a path that maybe they don't want to go. It's not their passion. So I want to reform K-12 education, and that's why we're getting attacked on the ads. They took just a snippet when I said it was overfunded. What I said was we need to have our schools be responsible and operate efficiently and effectively. Conveniently cut that out. Anybody that knows me knows there's not probably a private individual in the state of Maine that's dedicated more time and more energy by volunteering to help the Gorham school system, the school business roundtable that got educators and business leaders together. We're doing that for 6 years. Re-implemented the co-op program like I had, so juniors and seniors can go out and work and get credit for it. So that's why the MEA is attacking me and the unions are attacking me. They're scared to death to have somebody like me, an outsider, come in and do the real reform that K-12 education desperately needs. K-12 education is like Horton Hears a Who. The teachers are overworked, they're stressed out, nobody's listening to them, they have way too much administrative work and too much bureaucracy pushing down on them. They need help, and I'm coming to the rescue.
Thank you. Ellen Karen, a question for you. You've long been a proponent of greater regionalization of Maine's municipal services. Do you believe that should also be the case for our K-12 system? And as governor, what would you do to improve our current education system?
Let me start by saying I think classroom teachers are the great heroes in the state right now. They are on the cutting edge of massive family change, social change. My 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Weymouth, is the one who saved me as the low-income kid who walked to school every day. So I want to do everything we can to get money into the classroom. So I'm the only candidate in this race who has a specific call to shrink the size of state government over time and move more resources to the regional and local level, including in the classroom. I'm in favor of doing what the voters asked us to do, to get to the 55%. I'm in favor of increasing revenue sharing. I think innovation and creativity happens at the local and regional level. It does not happen most often in Augusta. So specifically, I agree with others that we have to do more in the early childhood side, that without question. I've also proposed, it's not germane to K through 12, but I propose a plan where people can earn 2 free years of higher education of whatever kind they need. I say earn because it's a two-way deal. We will sign a loan, they will have to stay and work in Maine. Every year they do that, they'll have no loan payment, and 10% of the principal will be forgiven. That will keep young people here and bring more young people to Maine.
Terry Hayes, do you think Maine's public K-12 education system is doing an acceptable job of preparing our students for the future? And as governor, what would you do to improve the K-12 system?
Thank you, Quincy. Acceptable, yes. Adequate, no. What's the challenge? What's the core mission of our public school system? It's teaching and learning. Now, if the public school were your business with that core mission, do you think we've appropriately allocated resources toward those 2 core things, teaching and learning? I don't think we have. I think we've had mission creep around our public school system and the teaching and learning that should be happening there. And that's not the fault of the people that are doing it. It's mostly the fault of those of us who've served on school boards and in the legislature over time. So I would suggest to you, if we focus on what the core mission is, we can get the outcomes we want from our students, from our children, from our teaching staff. But then what are the 2 most important resources in that paradigm? Teachers and time. Teachers and time. What are we investing? How much of the school day is time on task, where people are actually learning? We're delivering social services in the school environment, and I think we should continue to do that, but not during the school day. That's the challenge, is we've taken so much away of those 2 important things. The other thing I would suggest to you is a starting teacher in the state of Maine with a family of 4, a spouse and 2 children, should not qualify for public assistance. And right now they do, across the board. We have got to change that. That demonstrates how much we value that role. But you put a teacher, we've got good teachers and we're undercompensating them. Put them and time in the classroom and our kids are going to outperform our expectations. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to turn our attention to workforce. Unemployment is at record lows and employers are feeling the effects of that as they look for talented workers. Sean Moody, I will present this question to you first. As governor, what would you be able to do to help grow Maine's workforce, and what role, if any, should new Americans play in that strategy?
Well, this is our wheelhouse, this is what we do. The problem with government, okay, and people have been in the political system for so long, is they wait until a crisis occurs, and then all of a sudden they wake up reading the headlines like, geez, we got to do something about this. In private enterprise, we don't sit on our hands waiting for government to solve our problems. We started our workforce development 15 years ago. We'd sold our auto recycling business. We had one shop in Gorham, 10 coworkers. Today, in 17 years, 11 locations, up to 200 coworkers. And we knew back then the single biggest challenge we would face in growing our company and our business was finding and retaining good skilled people. So we grow our own. And that's, again, we'll get to that in terms of education system, how they're letting employers down. We participate in the Jobs for Maine Graduates program, a big advocate of that. I think we currently have 3 students working in our shops that are getting real world experience to go with the textbook academic experience. That's a powerful combination. We've been big supporters. I've been named a laureate for junior achievement. Again, teaching fiscal literacy, teaching public speaking, teaching entrepreneurship. These are the things that we need to start at a very young age. We can't wait till people are juniors and seniors and decide what career path they're going to take. I'm a blue collar guy. We're going to reform our career tech and vocational programs to be the best in the country. Go try to find an electrician, a welder, a carpenter right now. The pendulum swung too far. We have to focus on blue collar trades and give people occupational equality. Thank you.
Would you like an additional 15 seconds to address the question about new Americans and the role they might play in the strategy?
Thank you, Quincy.
15
I'm sorry.
seconds. No, that's okay. 15 seconds on the clock, please.
I apologize. I'm passionate about education. You folks know it. Immigrant population. Okay, think about that. They come over here just like generations before to seek employment and try to chase the American dream. I would insist that we cut the bureaucracy so that they can find a pathway to employment in quicker time and get on with their life and have a career coach to find out what they were doing in their home country and bring them back and follow that pathway into a current employment here. And we need people desperately.
Thank you. Thank you. Alan Karen, same question to you. As governor, what would you be able to do to help grow Maine's workforce, and what role, if any, should new Americans play in that strategy?
The workforce problem that we talk about is actually 2 different problems tied together. It's useful to separate them. One is highly skilled jobs that we cannot fill, and the other is not enough jobs for the skills we have. I suppose overlaying all of that, we've been losing people. We're aging in place. That necessarily means the workforce will shrink. As it shrinks, we're going to have problems like this. We all have solutions to fix the problems. We talked about education. We took practicality out of public education. We have to now reintroduce it. When I grew up, 40 of my friends, none of them went to college, not one. But many of them were very successful because they had practical skill training in high school. Much of that is gone. We've let it go. It's been a big, tragic mistake. The larger problem is, how are we going to grow a new economy in Maine? How are we going to grow a new prosperity in Maine? If all we're doing is resolving the problems of the moment instead of looking forward, we're going to continue to go in a downward spiral. We're aging. The problems are growing. The revenues are not. So we have to talk about a bigger problem here and a bigger solution. How do we grow a new economy? I wrote a book about that 2 years ago called Maine's Next Economy. I invite you to find it on Amazon. I don't make any money from it. But it is the beginning of a roadmap for how we get from here to there. I hope we get to talk about that more.
I'd like to give you as well an additional 15 seconds to touch on the role new Americans could play in your strategy to grow the workforce.
This is about immigrants, yes?
Yes, 15 seconds, yes.
Look, my grandfather came over the mountains from Quebec behind a horse and cart, and we endured, as Franco-Americans, all of the worst things that we're hearing now about other immigrants, how quickly we forget how much that has happened. We should never, and I'm deeply disappointed that this governor forgot his own heritage. I will not. We're going to open a welcome center in Maine for everybody who wants to come and help us build a new prosperity.
Terry Hayes, same question to you. As governor, what would you be able to do to help grow Maine's workforce, and what role, if any, should new Americans play in that strategy?
Thank you, Quincy. As governor, I want to support the efforts that are already underway. Some of these are private sector efforts, some are collaborative. I look at the Maine Spark program, I look at Focus Maine. There are a number of examples. I want to step back for a minute because I want to make sure I do the naturalization piece. Anybody here ever been to a naturalization ceremony? New citizens? Anybody? Have you done anything more emotional? I think I cried more than I did when I had my last child. I mean that, okay? Because I came to appreciate from the 151 new Mainers and new Americans in the room, from 52 different countries, what they went through to get here, and what I take for granted every day. So I will tell you, as your governor, I will attend every naturalization ceremony that happens in the state of Maine for the 4 years that I'm your governor, because I want folks to know that we can't solve this problem without international immigration. And international immigration has saved us before in our economy, and we're going to do it better this time around. So I look forward to having the opportunity to work with those that are already at work in this field. And how many of you have openings right now in your businesses? Just put your hands up, if you would. There's a few. This is our challenge. This is the goose that lays the golden egg. We don't solve this problem fast, and I mean measurably turn it around within the next 4 years. We can't pay for anything else. And that's the piece we have to know. We're all in this together, and I promise you, I will make sure that folks know what a great place Maine is to live and work. We're going to lead with what we love, and people will come.
Thank you. And Janet Mills, same question. As governor, what would you be able to do to help grow Maine's workforce, and what role, if any, should new Americans play in that strategy?
Thank you. Look, I'm keenly aware of the need to match the academic curricula, the training curricula of our community colleges, of our secondary schools, and our CTEs, and the university system with the workforce needs of today. We can do this with things like the Maine Quality Center through the community college system. They're doing a good job. That could be more robust. I put my money where my mouth is, too. Let me talk about Voc Ed for a second, because Mr. Moody has talked about that. I actually started a plumbing program with funds from settlements, non-tax dollars, in Biddeford High School, Oxford Hills High School, Lewiston Regional Tech, and Foster Tech. And I said, get some young women in those programs. And they did. And last year, the highest achieving person in the Foster Tech program was a young woman in the plumbing program. In addition, I think we need to invest in renewable energy to bring jobs to Maine. I think we need to improve the partnerships and symbiotic relationship between our schools and the workforce and the employers. I think new Mainers, we need to offer a more robust English second language curricula through the adult education programs. We're giving them a little bit of English training and then sort of dropping them off. And I think I read somewhere that about 40% of the new Mainers in the Portland area alone come here with bachelor's degrees equivalents or greater. That's an incredible workforce for us to take into consideration. And credentialing, matching the credentials from their previous countries of origin with the credentials required for workforce to work in Maine is important, and we can do that through the professional licensing commissions that we have. It takes leadership from Augusta to do that, though.
Thank you. Now I would like to turn our attention to economic growth. For Maine to continue to grow, there needs to be a focus on both rural and urban development. Alan Karen, I will pose this question to you first. As governor, what would you do to help continue growth in the urban areas of Maine, like Portland, which in turn would spark growth and economic development in our more rural areas of the state?
I want to suggest that we rethink the way we've been trying to grow the economy entirely. I want to suggest that we move away from the idea that we're going to hit the lottery, that we're going to attract some big business to come to Maine. We invest all of our energy and time in this attraction discussion. It has not worked as an economic strategy. We've been trying it for 50 years since the mills began to decline. We need to grow jobs here. That's the first fundamental shift we need to make. If we focus on how to grow jobs here from the bottom up, we will discover how eventually we could attract other jobs. I want to create a state in which we are an incubator for small startups, entrepreneurs, innovators, dreamers, risk takers. There are thousands of people across Maine with great ideas, great dreams. We're not spending our resources helping them. We're too busy chasing big guys who, frankly, don't need our help. Here's another thing we've got to stop doing. Stop writing blank checks to people who promise jobs, and start giving tax credits to people who actually do create jobs. Not before they do it, but once they've done it. We have limited resources in this state to leverage for new jobs. We've got to be very, very disciplined about how we spend money. Those are two things we could start with.
Thank you. Terry Hayes, same question to you. As governor, what would you do to help continue growth in urban areas of Maine that could spark growth in the more rural areas of the state?
Thank you, Quincy. We can't grow if we can't fill the positions we currently have. So I'll remind you what I said the last time I answered. That's at the top of the list. It's filling those openings. There are literally thousands of openings across Maine right now. We're running a surplus at the state government in terms of tax collection. Imagine what we'd be doing if those jobs were filled. Okay, so we start with that. There were significant efforts underway. The FOR project within the forest industry is going to help revitalize rural Maine. The goal is to generate $12 billion of economic activity from our forest natural resource products by 2025. I want to help with that effort. The Focus Maine program, which is a private sector driven and grant funded, and these folks are looking at creating 20,000 traded jobs in the next 10 years. I want to know from them, what can I do to help that effort move along? Because those are the jobs that bring money into Maine, that add value and support our exports. And the third is the Maine Spark program. Their goal is to make sure that 60% of adult Mainers have a credential of value by 2025. All of those things are doable. All of them integrate and bring us to what are we going to do to invigorate our economy. It's about our human capital. It's about improving on that. And I want to work with those folks that are already doing this. This is akin to changing a tire on a moving vehicle, because we're already doing some things. And as your next governor, I want to help in whatever way I can on the policy side and bringing the legislature along so that we can reach those goals. They're laudable. They're part of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Mills, as governor, what would you do to help continue growth in the urban areas that could spark growth and economic development in the rural areas?
Well, I think my vision is of a Maine that is not divided. I don't like to talk about two Maines. I don't like to talk about urban versus rural. I see us as one Maine, one people, one group. And I believe I can recruit good businesses to rural Maine. I am from rural Maine. And I live in Farmington, where I grew up. I live there now. I've worked very hard with Republicans, independents, and Democrats across the state, employers and employees, people with and economic consultants, to develop an action plan for Maine's economy. It's on my website. It includes connectivity. It includes developing rural broadband hubs with, like districts, sort of modeled on the sewer districts, the water districts, that kind of thing, where people can come and start new businesses or grow, or expand existing businesses, sharing overhead, sharing good quality broadband. It includes solar energy and renewable energy, other renewable energy sources, offshore wind. It includes data centers, which we don't think about too much. It includes better cell phone coverage in all areas, urban and rural. You know what that's like. And it includes a small business accelerator, because it's key to small business growth. And the Welcome Home program and a rural workplace grant program to allow rural communities to rehab buildings and make them suitable for businesses and these broadband co-working spaces. So those are some of my ideas. I invite you to go on the website and look for more details and let me know what you think.
Thank you. Sean Moody, same question.
Thank you. I just want to, Terry, I love your new ad there, the person dropping the calls and everything. We can all relate to that. That's a fact. We travel all over the state. My wife and I, Chrissy, didn't even hit our own pillow for like 3-4 nights. So we go up there, we really gotten to know the folks in rural Maine. And remember, the only person that had the vision to serve on the University of Maine system and the community college system boards of trustees 4 years ago. No one ever done that. Get those two systems that were siloed, were bureaucratic, competing for funding, competing for students, to work together. It takes vision. It takes someone from the outside sometimes to see these things that need to be done. You look at where USM was 4 years ago. You remember? look where USM is today. President Cummings is actually in attendance, and we'll give him a lot of credit putting a leadership team together to do that. One thing that's exciting about rural Maine is that people up there are resilient. They're responsible, they're proud, they don't whine and fuss, they get up and they do their work. And one thing that's missing is the work ethic is starting to slowly dissipate, not just in rural Maine, but across Maine. We're gonna allow our teenagers, like I was an at-risk kid, to go back to work. We've blocked them out of local jobs. We can hire a young teenager that's not, say, involved in sports or going to college, but sitting on the couch, idle hands, the devil's workshop. So we're going to change our labor laws to allow our young teenagers to integrate back into our local communities and our local employers to keep their wage costs down and create that, wisdom experience with youth to help build that next generation workforce.
Thank you. So that concludes the question and answer segment for our 4 key issue areas. I now want to turn our attention to some of the questions we've received from the audience. We've asked you to submit questions over the last few days to issues@portlandregion.com. Again, each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the question. I'm actually going to start with a question around state regulation. Terry Hayes, I will pose this to you first. One of the first things Governor LePage did in office was to add the tagline, open for business, to Maine sign the way life should be. 8 years later, would you agree Maine is open for business? If so, why? If not, what would you do differently?
Thank you, Quincy. Yes, I would agree that Maine is open for business. I think it's open inconsistently in different regions of the state. And again, the greatest challenge I believe we face is that of workforce. And we can't solve it if we, cow-tied every one of our kids and kept them here, which we're not going to do anyway. We need to be welcoming. We need to recognize that we can make Maine the best state in the country to work in if we want, and when we do that, they'll come. We did it with our tourism industry. Now think about that. Think about the investment we've made in visitors. And so at this point, we have anywhere between 35 and 41 million people that visit Maine in any given year. If we take and translate just 0.05% of those visitors that come here to play and turn them into stay here, think of what that would do for our economy. That would solve our workforce challenge, okay? At least in terms of vast numbers at this point. That is doable. So we have to look at what's the success. That's our book of business. That's our leading industry. How do we take that and get what we need from it? And what we need are folks who will come here and stay. I don't know how many of you came here. You weren't necessarily born here, but there are reasons you came. And this is what I say when we lead with what we love. I was fortunate enough to be born here, but lots of you came. Why did you come? And we need to lead with that because people around the world want what we have. We have to tell them we have it and invite them to come. And I would say that's the biggest challenge, and that's the way to approach it. Thank you, Quincy.
Thank you. Janet Mills, same question. Would you agree Maine is open for business? If so, why? If not, what would you do differently?
Maine has seen a slower economic growth than any other state in New England. It disturbs me greatly to read the Department of Labor's report showing virtually zero job growth in the next 8 years. That's a concern. Are we open for business? Technically, yes. But have we seen challenging business practices? Yes, we have. Look, I want to be the recruiter in chief when it comes to recruiting good paying jobs to the state of Maine and recruiting our young people to come back here and recruiting and welcoming new Mainers with job qualifications to stay here and contribute to the workforce. I want to be the promoter in chief when it comes to telling the world what a great state we have, what great people we are, what a great work ethic we have, and wonderful natural resources. And I want to be the closer in chief when it comes to cutting a business deal or any other deal on the part of the state of Maine. I will be true to my word. I won't pull the rug out from under business deals as we have seen in the last few years. I will not sit on bonds that the majority of the people, 60-70% of the people, have voted on and the legislature has supported by 2/3 votes. Sit on them for 3 and 4 years while the economy needs senior housing. The economy needs land for Maine's future funding. The economy needs conservation and business investment. I will not do that. That's not a good business practice. I will not threaten $63 million worth of bonds as they try to go out the door, as they've been sold, and as Standard & Poor's and others threaten our bond rating. That's not good business practices. You won't see me doing that.
Thank you. Sean Moody, same question.
Well, I would just say, 8 years ago, when the governor and the Republican legislature inherited $750 million in hospital debt, a $1.3 billion pension crisis, I would say that probably had a little effect on our economic growth or expansion over time. And those bills have been paid, the pension system is back on track, and we've even got some money in our rainy day fund. So I would like to say the governor didn't inherit that, didn't ask for that. Imagine how much infrastructure improvements, the bonds for the university system, community college work could have been done with $750 million that they had to turn around and pay the current administration's debt. That's not right. And that's why it takes a business person who's fiscally responsible, that understands budgets and understands how to make business deals, that have done them their whole life. I would say I'm excited about Maine's future. And are we open for business? Yes. I think right now there's never been a time in our history for upward mobility for young people than right now. As I said in the opening, some people see it as a perfect storm. I see it as a perfect opportunity for our young people to stay in Maine and go into influential and highly compensated positions in the next 2 to 5 years. And the other thing that we need to do is stop telling our kids there's no opportunity here. 7 or 8 years ago, there wasn't. They left, 10% unemployment. Now we're at full employment. We're gonna call them up and tell them to come home.
Thank you. Alan, Karen, same question.
I want you to imagine a state in the country that has a sign at its border that says, "We're not open for business." Anybody want to shout out? You seen that sign? The point there is that every state does certain things. We do the same things. I'd rather have a sign, by the way, that says, "You are welcome here." But we always talk about doing the things that every other state is doing as though that's an economic strategy. It isn't. A strategy would look at what we have uniquely as assets, what we can do. The national economy goes up and down, and politicians take credit for it when it goes up and defer blame when it goes down. We're the little dinghy that goes up and down with it, but we're always below the national average. How do we change that relationship? How do we actually increase incomes in Maine, increase prosperity, climb up the national ladder? That's really the challenge for us. We're not going to do that by repeating the same arguments we've been hearing for 20 or 30 years. We're not going to do that by having small ideas about how to manage things better. We need big and bold, transformative ideas. If we don't do those things, what was reported 6 weeks ago that we'll create 100 jobs in the next 8 years will happen. Because the premise there is we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. We must change. We must think more boldly. That's what I offer in this campaign.
Thank you. Let's now turn our attention to the opioid epidemic. Janet Mills, I'm going to start with you. Maine's experiencing an opioid crisis that's affecting families, the workplace, our hospitals, and our jails. What is your top priority to address this crisis?
Thank you. I mentioned that I've actually distributed Narcan across the state to 85 different police departments. I'm allowed to do that as your chief law enforcement officer. And we've saved 535 lives as of 2 days ago with that Narcan alone. That's important, saving lives. We read in the newspaper recently that dozens of seals washed up on the beaches of Scarborough and Cape Elizabeth, and people were appalled. It was front page news, top of the fold. But when 180 people died in the first 6 months of this year, we're not talking about it. Let's talk about it and stop stigmatizing the problem and stigmatizing those who are victims of substance use disorder. Let's help save their lives and then turn them around. I believe in a system where a person wants help, they get help, and that includes getting insurance for them, getting health care coverage when they want treatment so they can get treatment. Prevention is key as well, and education. But when somebody presents to the clinic or emergency room and has a substance use disorder, or they've overdosed, I want to call in a recovery coach right at that moment in time. I want to call in a doctor who can prescribe medication-assisted treatment, give that person 5 minutes of competency to turn their life around, and then provide a hub and spokes treatment model all across the state of Maine, which some of our hospitals are trying to do now. That takes leadership from the state. I've been on 2 task forces. I'm sick of talking about it. I want to get it done. I've got a 10-point plan. It's on my website. I hope to look at it.
Thank you. Sean Moody, what is your top priority to address the opioid crisis?
You know, I think this will help people to better understand how we want to lead state departments and programs. There is a lot of great recovery centers that are springing up across Maine. I mean, Bob's here from Milestone. We recently went to the Macaulay House, which is through Mercy. Maine Health has a recovery center in Biddeford. ENSO is a private recovery center. Every one of them agreed to my proposal, which was this: we need a data-driven matrix system in our programs. So you choose to set the standards, okay? Not less than 5 and not more than 10 matrix that you want to measure in your program. It'll be standard across the recovery centers. So we can share best practices to actually see which programs are working and producing the results that we need and scale those up. Because like a lot of government programs, it's throw it against the wall and hope it sticks. Good efforts, you know, good intended, that's fine, but we need to be more strategic and we need to be more disciplined in how we attack, which is really something that's just come upon us in the last 5 to 10 years. So data-driven analysis with the professionals that know what they're doing. The other thing I'm really big on are sober houses. We talk about a lot about clinical help and professionals. There's nobody can help a person to the pathway to sobriety than somebody that's been there. It's powerful. And the last thing I would just wanted to mention, you need 3 things. You need someone to be stable, sober, and employed. And if you don't have all 3 legs under that stool, it's going to tip.
Thank you. Alan, Karen, same question to you. What is your top priority to address the opioid crisis?
I lost 2 of my favorite nephews in recent years. One was to opioids, one was to mental health and suicide. So these are critical issues to me and to all of us in the state of Maine. As we move day to day from one group to another, we hear of yet another crisis after another, all of which require money. We don't have enough money to respond to them. Each one of them is a symptom of a deeper problem, and that problem is the absence of opportunity and hope in large swaths of Maine. You don't feel it as much here. You have different problems in this region. But in large parts of Maine, there is a hopelessness that has taken root and has led to frustration, fear of the future, anger, expressed itself in our politics. It is noteworthy to me that the federal government just passed a huge opiates bill, and the vote in the Senate was 99-1. You cannot get a vote for the time of day in the United States Senate to be 99-1. Why did they do that while for 2 years we were locked in a kind of hyper-partisan gridlock on this issue? One side saying we want more enforcement, the other side saying we want more services. Yes, we want both. Why could we not find common ground? That is the fundamental issue in this campaign. Why can't we get things done? I would submit to you it's because we have 2 major parties stuck in old ideas and more intent on stopping the other party than getting anything done.
You. Terry Hayes, same question.
See, and I was going to start where Alan ended. I would suggest to you that the thing that's held us back the most in the state of Maine is partisanship, because we've known about this challenge. We've been talking about it in the public policy arena now for 6 years, and talking about it using that same word, the word crisis. So why is it? Because our politics have become about keeping score and tit for tat and ruling by press release instead of actually focused on the problem. So I want to be focused on the problem. The other piece that I think we have to be conscious of is there's a significant stigma attached to substance use and substance abuse. And when somebody avoids coming forward for assistance because of that shame, we're all part of why we believe that about substance use. We're judgmental about it. We need a leader that understands that this is a brain disease And that if you're gonna fix it, if you're gonna help people get well, they have to be willing to admit that they're sick, and that there will be treatment for them when they step forward. You know, we haven't put any state dollars, any significant state dollars at all, at this crisis that we've had for 6 years. It's time we pony up. And I think where we need to put the money is on treatment. If someone steps up for treatment, they shouldn't be put on a wait list. It needs to be on demand. I don't disagree with Sean. We've got to be treating people with strategies that we know that work, but I wouldn't start with that. I'd start with the lifeline, because that's how we hang on to them long enough to be able to help them beat this scourge back. And we're going to have to pay for it together.
Thank you. We are going to squeeze in one final question that deals with infrastructure. Sean Moody, I will start with you. Where would you rank the issue of Maine's deteriorating infrastructure in your list of priorities, and how would you address it?
Well, you heard me say earlier, you know, $750 million would have really been a great investment. If we didn't have to pay our bills, we could have invested that in Maine's infrastructure, highways, bridges, schools, infrastructure. I think that the biggest thing surrounding infrastructure, we need to spend our money smarter. You know, we're doing some things now with the DOT, we're bundling bridges, so a contractor can bid on 3 contract bridge jobs that are within a close vicinity. It makes it more economical. Design build is another creative way to lower cost, so when we do infrastructure improvements. And I will just say this, our company is co-worker owned. We have 0 debt, and we have plenty of money in the rainy day fund. In 08, 09, and 10, when the economy crashed, we grew at a faster rate then than ever before. Why? Because we had the money to invest. Real estate prices were down, permitting was quick and streamlined, people were more business friendly at that time, people looking for work. So we grew faster in the state of decline because we were prepared. I think we need fiscal discipline to keep building a responsible rainy day fund and invest that when we start down the other side of this economy, which we will at some point. When we need those jobs, you can get work done at 80 cents on the dollar instead of doing it now where you're going to pay $1.25 on the dollar. And it raises the cost of private projects as well in permitting. So we shouldn't be competing with private practice. We should be leading and waiting to invest when the economy needs it most.
Thank you. Alan Karen, to you. Where would you rank Maine's deteriorating infrastructure in your list of priorities, and how would you address it?
Every generation of Americans before us built the infrastructure needed to advance the economy for the next generation. Every one of them paid forward. We are the first one that has lived off past investments. It has allowed infrastructure to decline. We have 2 urgent infrastructure needs in Maine. You know both of them, broadband in all parts of the state, and of course maintaining this highway and bridge system that we've built. The national gas tax has not changed since 1993. It hasn't changed for 7 years in Maine. Why? Because anyone who proposes a fix or anyone who proposes any revenue for any purpose can be assured of being attacked in advertising in the next campaign as a big spender. Again, not only partisanship, but the excess negativity and the attack ads that we see every night in our homes. This is grinding us to a halt. We must find a way to break through it. I think we're going to have a robust conversation. I will help lead that conversation about transportation. The world's auto manufacturers are on the verge of pouring out millions of new electric cars. The gas tax will not fund highways with electric cars. We must find an entirely new funding strategy that doesn't rely on gas tax. Otherwise, we're going to have a shrinking group of gasoline users paying more and more to sustain a crumbling system. We must be creative here.
Thank you. Terry Hayes, same question to you.
Thank you, Quincy. Where does infrastructure rank? Again, the workforce is at the very top for me because I don't see how we generate the revenue we need for the other things that were in demand, if you will. But it comes fairly close because it's part of a collaborative and a dynamic statewide economic development plan. So I'll tell you, the funding stream that Alan mentioned in terms of how we're going to pay for our roads and our bridges, we've had that conversation in the Transportation Committee for a number of years, and we know the reality sits there and that expertise around that horseshoe, but we haven't been willing to do it by the time it gets up to leadership. So it's going to take leadership to get this done. We have to recognize we need to change the mix. We need to expand broadband. I talked earlier about being the best state in the country to work. That means your business has access to the superhighway of today's economy. That means that your employees have access and can work from anywhere. We need to invest money in broadband expansion in Maine, and I mean state tax dollars. I want to remind you that, I'm here today as a job applicant, one of 4 for this anticipated opening in January. You'll be making that decision on November 6th, and it's my goal to earn your vote by the time we get there. So if I haven't done it this morning, if I could prevail upon you to wait until November 6th to vote, I would really appreciate that, because I think I can get you by then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Janet Mills, how would you rank the issue of Maine's deteriorating infrastructure in your list of priorities, and how would you address it?
Okay, we're talking about infrastructure, right? Thank you. Look, first I would encourage you to vote for question number 3, which is $106 million in bond money, 101 of it to support 3,000 jobs, rebuilding and rebuilding our roads, our bridges, which are extremely deteriorated in some cases, and our ports, some of our port facilities, and $5 million of that to replace culverts over streams in rural areas where the tributaries are blocking passage of salmon, et cetera. That's an important measure. This is something that Republicans and Democrats and Greens agree on. Even in Washington, there's support for infrastructure monies. And right now, there is federal money we need to tap into. Matching funds for this bond, question 3. Urge you to support that first and foremost. And of course, it is a high priority. We haven't built any new roads in Maine in about 8 years. We've skimmed the surface. We've used skinny mix to make roads look prettier. But the base of the roads are deteriorating. I think we need to take a real look at what we're doing and how we're doing it. And broadband obviously is part of infrastructure. Broadband and internet connectivity, cell phone connectivity. My grandson dropped a call in my car the other day. He said, "Grammy, this is why we're leaving the state of Maine." I said, "Wyatt, you dropped one call with your girlfriend, you're abandoning us. Come back, we're gonna fix this." It's crazy when you can't drive from Portland to the state's capital or back without dropping a call at mile 47. I feel like standing out there with an antenna and say, we're going to fix this, and we will in my administration in a truly bipartisan way.
Thank you, and we are out of time. Though I have one final question for the candidates. It's a yes or no answer. The question is, should you win the election in November, will you join us here on this stage in June of next year as our next governor of Maine?
Proudly.
Of course.
Absolutely.
I have been on this stage a couple of times talking about the next economy. I will be back to talk about it again. Thank you.
And did we hear from Janet Mills?
Oh, yes.
Yes, perfect. Sorry, I didn't hear you. Wanted to make sure everybody answered. I'm happy with those answers.
It depends on what you're serving, but Thank you, Chris.
Well, that is great. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank our 4 candidates. Can we please have a round of applause for our candidates?